Wow, I hear that typing over here. No, okay, I gotta get
I'm
this link.
sorry, should I stop?
No, I'm just kidding. All right, guys, welcome back to another OnlineBookClub.org official live chat. I'm here with my good friend, and this is the first interview I've done with someone who isn't an author, so there's a lot of pressure. I'm here with Joey Gatto TV. Joey, how you doing?
Hello, thank you for referring to me as my YouTube name.
What is it, Joey? Oh, did I say Joey Gatto TV? Really?
Yes, you did.
That was not intentional. But I guess it's just because I'm so nervous to talk to you that I'm just not even able to speak.
Oh, stop.
Okay, so Joey, for those of you who don't know, give a quick little introduction on who you are, and then we'll talk about how you why you're on this. And I was gonna say podcast, but why you're on this live show.
Well, I'm a 23-year-old boy from New Jersey. In a past life, I made YouTube videos, and by that I mean I was a full-time YouTube content creator about 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I have since switched towards pursuing a career in artificial intelligence and computer science, and I am a sophomore in college. And I should also, I guess, say I like books.
Yeah, I feel like that's something we connected on. Like, we've been friends for a very long time, but I feel like in the last 3 years or so, we've talked. A lot of our discussions have been based on Harry Potter, and maybe not as much now, right? But like back in the day, we talked a lot about Harry Potter.
Yeah, well, we both read it for the first time late in our lives, and at around the same time, which was interesting. Yeah, that was. It's funny. We really did get into the game late on Harry Potter, but
Yeah.
what a great series that is.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that I feel like a lot of people can relate on. And not only Harry Potter, but books, and I guess having that same love and interest for a specific book series, and whether it's movies, but you can go into a bunch of that. There's like what I'm saying is you could relate to someone in a lot of different levels. But I'm very glad that we both enjoyed Harry Potter, and then we went on tour, and you got what was the Harry Potter thing that you received? The gift from someone?
It was an autograph photo from the main three characters.
All right, but it was J.K. Rowling someone who signed it?
No, she didn't sign it.
Okay, all right. So now let's get a little deeper here. Let's break the mold and go pretty deep into Joey Gatto's mind. So you and me discuss how important reading is, and I feel like a lot of the people that I know, at least, not a lot of them read. As for you, you're a college student right now. How many of your friends from college actually read for pleasure?
Well, I feel like it might be a little unfair of me to. I don't mean to criticize my friends because a lot of the engineering majors are forced to just be doing math all the time.
Okay.
And wish they could. I wish I had more time to read for pleasure. I sadly can really only read on the weekends now, but I would say maybe only two that I can think of who frequently read for pleasure.
So you have two friends, and like I'm not trying to like put a number on your friends, but out of how many people is that? Like is
maybe 6 or 7 people I'm thinking of.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's actually a pretty good ratio, though. Like 2 out of 6 or 7, that's like 1/3.
Yeah, and I'm including like not just literature, but people who I know read the paper every day. I count that.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
No, I count that too. I think because reading the paper, you're gaining knowledge, but I feel like you're also reading for yourself. Like nobody's forcing you to read the paper. It's not like it's
exactly. And there's a lot more to the paper than just current events. You know,
the funnies.
Yeah, the comics.
No, but okay.
They're good stories, though.
Yeah. Okay, so let's compare two people, right? Let's go back to Joey from high school. How much did you read in high school?
A lot of Spark Notes.
So honestly, how many books did you finish in high school?
One. I shamefully can't remember which one.
Okay.
But I remember my teacher, who I really liked. She was my African American Studies teacher. Kept saying to me all year that she was going to get me to read a book. And I don't know, her and I got along really well. And then it was a short one that was assigned. I was like, you know what, I'm going to read this book and like make her proud. And I read it as my senior year of high school. That was the first book I read in high school.
Did you like it?
I remember not hating it.
Oh, well, that's not good. I feel like that's like the one step above hating. It's like not hating, but you're close. Like,
Yeah,
and
basically.
I was the same way in high school, but I remember growing up, I really enjoyed reading, and then I read Catcher in the Rye in high school, and I really enjoyed it, but I don't know why that didn't cause me to read more. I guess I was just a lazy high school kid. So why?
If I may, though, when I was younger, I read a lot,
Okay.
and I think when I got into middle school, it became not cool.
Yeah.
And I stopped. But in elementary school, I read I read like all the Lemony Snicket books. I read all the Cirque du Freak books, which I don't think they're very popular. But it was about like some boy who turns into a vampire.
Okay.
And then middle school came around, and I think I was pressured out of it.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Okay, let's cover that a little bit then. I didn't plan on asking you this, but this is a pretty good question. Why do you think other people and other kids, I guess, like middle school and high school, look at reading as not cool? Is it because it involves like something intellectual and people just want to find something to put down? Like, why is it labeled not cool to read?
I think reading is more than just something we do for pleasure. I think it's a skill, and people expect it to just, be this really fun thing every time they sit down, and it's not. And sometimes you read a book and it's not your favorite, and you will develop your reading comprehension to a point where you know when to put it down and move on, or that maybe it has potential, but regardless, when we first start reading, we're not very good at it, and I think it can be discouraging. It's one thing, when you're younger, and I'm reading Lemony Snicket, but I think as we get older and we're assigned older books written in different dialects, it becomes less interesting and more challenging, and then people give up because it takes a little bit of work to get used to.
Yeah, no, and I also think that like you said, you're reading a book, like you don't know if you're gonna like it from the start. So especially at a young age, people get discouraged very easily. So if you read 2 books you think are not the best, you might be like, I don't like this reading thing. But I've always been a firm believer, and I talk about this all the time on these live shows, that there's a book out there for everyone. And it's about being patient enough to find the genre you like reading, but also even the author and the writing style. And I even if you, let's say, I know there's people who say I have like ADD and I just can't sit down and read a book. There's audiobooks, like there's audiobooks. So I just think that people do find more of a reason to make excuses why they shouldn't read instead of actually giving it a try.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think that the benefit that they receive from reading can be easily gained by watching a Netflix series or something. Yeah. And I'm sure a good portion of it is similar, but I really think that television and film lacks that, when you're reading a novel, you're in the character's mind. Yeah. Like, you don't get to see what the actors are really thinking most of the time. No, and I think that's why reading really helps develop people's ability to empathize with others, because it really allows you to walk in someone else's shoes, unlike any other form of media consumption.
No, that makes sense. And okay, so let's go a little further down the rabbit hole. If you were to give one pitch on why someone should give reading a try, what would that pitch be? But before you say that, I just want to say anyone because there's people watching right now. If you're watching and you have questions for Joey, I'm going to ask them towards the end. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to ask Joey when it comes to reading, go for it, and and if not, I have a bunch of questions for you. So okay, so if you were to pitch someone who doesn't read to read, what would you say to them?
Well.
Elevator pitch too. Got to be short.
Oh man,
I know it's a tough question.
Usually you get to prepare those. No, you're right though. I should have this ready. I would say that
I can go first if you want. If you want me to go first, because I talked about this so many times on this, and you could think, and then we can.
All right. Yeah. You let me hear yours.
Okay. So this is what I would say, and I think we've talked about this too. That we live in a world where knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the more topics you're well versed on, the more power you hold. Like if you, let's say you read a book about Jeremy Lin, and former Knicks superstar, and you go to a job interview and you see a Jeremy Lin like autograph on the wall. Like you're able to make that connection to whoever's interviewing you hopefully using that knowledge to propel you further in life. And this is, of course, an obscure example, but I'm saying, like, if you go to school and your professor is a huge Broadway fan and you just finished reading a book on the making of Wicked, and like you bring that up, you're going to develop a connection with that person. And then in the future, you're going to have a relationship with that person. If they have something that an opportunity they can hand you, or something that they can help push you further in life, you're going to come to mind over the other person who didn't have that knowledge and didn't make that connection. So I'm a firm believer in knowledge is power. Even in studying in high school, I used to say, or in college, I would read these boring, huge psych books, and I would say the more I know is better for me in the future. So that's how I like to look at reading as well. And that's what the quick pitch I'd give to someone. Okay, you're up.
I think it would depend who I was speaking to.
Okay.
I think if I knew, I think this is a whole other discussion, but any form of persuasive rhetoric is more powerful when you know what is important to the person you're talking to.
Okay.
So I think someone who's not interested in reading but wants to be successful in business, whatever it may be, should understand that one thing is reading makes you a better writer. It makes you more eloquent, and it allows you to experience things that you'll never experience, and those experiences can help you make normal decisions in your everyday life. Yeah. I recently read a very famous book, All the Light We Cannot See, and I forget the author's name, but it's about one of the main characters is a little boy who is an engineer who fixes radios, and they describe his train of thought when he's fixing a radio. Okay. And I actually found it really inspiring, and I try and emulate it in my own work as a programmer, because the way he goes about answering engineering problems is really fascinating, but also logical, and it wasn't a way that he would imagine, like, the little photons and whatever electric particles were traveling through each tube. He would pretend he was one of them, and then he would see where he would get stopped, and that's how he was able to fix everything. And that's kind of how I look at problems now in computers. I'd never thought of it like that. And that's a book about World War II that has nothing to do with anything that actually ended up benefiting my career, potentially. Yeah. So I think, you can learn a lot from the characters in books, and it can make you better at anything you want to do.
You can apply what you learned from a book to anything you're doing in normal life, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so now let's get into YouTuber books, because we both have.
I have one.
Whose book do you have?
Grace's Guide, Daily Grace. When back she was Daily Grace.
1 to 10, rate it.
I read. I don't want to rate a. It's like,
is it not
it's
a real
little
book?
Like one-liners, like.
Yeah, it's stupid.
You know what I remember from that book?
What?
One thing I remember was her saying, it was like tip number 7 or something, like crest whitening strips really do work. That's what I remember from that book. It was like little things like that on how to like fix yourself.
Oh yeah, that just sounds so terrible. Like, I like to respect any author, but I feel like when an author is not a real author and they're a YouTuber just using their fans to. Okay, we'll get into it. Before I go on my.
It would be different if it was like if you want to ask me about John Green, that's different because he's trying to make novels. But these are literally just like little coffee table whatever books. Right. Okay. So I don't even count them as books in my head.
So you're saying, okay, let's get into this then. You let's say Joey Graceffo or Dan and Phil and PewDiePie come out with these books, right? And they're like glorified picture books. But there's also other YouTubers who do come out with, like, Tyler Oakley wrote an actual book about his life, and like Connor Frant has written a few books that it seem like actual books. I know Shane Dawson has written.
I heard that one wasn't great.
Okay, so no, just all I want is your opinion. I don't care where you start from my question. Your opinion on YouTuber books.
Okay, this isn't the answer you want. But I think that if I was them and someone said, hey, you'll sell hundreds of thousands of anything you write on a piece of paper, I would probably sell it.
Yeah, I get it.
They're garbage. Okay, I'll look at the bright side first. If it gets kids in Barnes & Noble and it gets them looking at books, there's a small benefit.
Okay.
But I think it's completely void of any intellectual stimulation. I think it's just nonsense. It's just, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. Like, it's just, like, I feel like my greatest insult would just be that I don't even count it as a book.
Yeah.
It's like a novelty item for a fan of these people. It's not real literature. It's just nonsense. It's like me buying a shirt at like a concert.
Yeah. So, okay, compare YouTuber books to, and I'm going to ask you if this bothers you. So you know how like there's authors out there who work their whole life to be a New York Times bestseller and still don't hit that mark. And then you get someone like Alfie Days, who doesn't even write a real book, and he writes like a burn book, and it's a New York Times bestseller for 8 weeks in a row. How does that make you feel? Does that bother you, or are you indifferent about it?
I guess we've become numb to things like that. It's the same thing, right? Like, how many incredibly talented musicians are out there, and then you have like garbage Katy Perry songs on the top 10, you know, just because she's famous. Like, a lot. I just think that a lot more goes into, like, when you start factoring politics into art, it's a whole different scale of judgment, you know. You can't compare sales because you're not comparing artwork, you know what I mean? Like, Alfie selling more doesn't mean anything compared to a great author who only sells 100 copies. So I mean, it's unfortunate. That's the way the world works. I don't really think anything of it because, of course, famous people are going to have a bigger market to sell their books to. But it's too bad, and I think it's difficult for authors to find a platform to promote themselves on, unlike, you know, musicians and video content creators, and that is a shame.
Yeah, I guess with authors and social media, the main thing that they have to do is kind of really just post content that might not even be about their book. Because, like, this is a whole new topic, but when I look at authors on social media, they can't release a 20-second audio clip of their book. Like, it just wouldn't make sense. You know? Like, a musician can do that. So as an author, if you were an author on social media, since you do have a history in social media, how would you go about marketing yourself? Would you just brand yourself as an author and not promote the book individually? Or would you try to just promote the book heavily and hope someone sees it and is interested?
Well, I guess it depends what my budget is. If it's zero, I guess you really have to just hustle on social media and try and get it in front of people's eyes. But, you know, there's a downside to over promoting because then people don't take you seriously. It's tough. I mean, I've never thought about this until right now, but promoting a book is really hard, especially with, you know, all the bookstores, not all of them, but eventually are probably going to go out of business. And then it just becomes, you know, who can get on the front page of Amazon. And that's something has nothing to do with how talented you are. That's just an algorithm.
And it's true, though, because that's what's also very frustrating about these big name like YouTubers coming out and throwing these books into the world, because they really can write about anything and it'll sell. Like, it's the same way that they could put out these what are they called? Like these audio where they get a bunch of music and put it on like a.
Oh yeah, like it's literally like a playlist.
Yeah, and they sell a playlist. So, and that's why a lot of these YouTubers, you have, like, for those of you who don't know, the biggest YouTuber's name is PewDiePie, and he wrote a book. And by writing a book, I mean he has a bunch of pictures and quotes by the pictures. And it's like, I believe it was like silly quotes, like nothing even serious. And to me, as someone who's such a fan of reading and an avid bookworm, I would be so offended when I would go to Barnes & Noble and see these. I would like cover them up with other books because I'm like, and of course maybe that's me being a little bit petty, but you see these people who were obviously exploiting the art of writing a book for money, which, you know what, if someone wants to make money that way, that's fine, but it's just very frustrating when a book that's so juvenile and doesn't really offer much any knowledge or really help you grow as I can't I'm being subjective, but I don't think reading a PewDiePie book is going to help me grow as a person that doesn't have a story or any ups and downs or character development. So it just frustrated me as a reader to see that go to the top of the New York Times bestseller, and I feel like it makes a joke out of the New York Times bestselling list.
I mean, I definitely agree with the last statement that it does make that list seem less credible when you see PewDiePie on it writing a little picture book. The other break I give the YouTubers is like, you gotta write something for your like dumb 13-year-old audience. You know, it's even John Green, who is brilliant and has done really great things for the world, writes like little kid books. Like, every book he's written is basically the same plot, at least from the 4 that I've read. And I liked it the first 2 times, but, you know, he's also made it a little bit into a business. He knows what sells.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that when you already have a demographic of viewers, that they feel obliged to produce content they think they're expecting, which is too bad.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Back to the John Green point, though. I know you said this earlier, but I don't put him even in the same category as YouTubers, because he actually did write real books. Like, they weren't just some BS he threw out there. Like, these are real books that have a story and plot and character development. Yes, a lot of his characters are very similar, and his protagonist oddly resembles him at a young age. Every time you have the nerdy white kid who's going after the very pretty girl who happens to find him quirky and interesting. Like, that happens pretty
every book.
Like, I have a bunch back in, and we'll wrap it up soon because I need to go. But I got where's my John Green books? There's Paper Towns. What was the other one that was like that? Help me out.
Our Stars.
No, that's the one I'm thinking of. It was the one with it has a black cover. It's about the kid who goes to like a camp.
Yeah. Oh my God. There's Abundance of Catherines.
Looking for Alaska. I didn't read Abundance.
Looking for Alaska. Yeah,
that's what it was. CL Knopf says I agree. It's so hard to get your book out there, and it must be really difficult as an author because, and this is what I would recommend because I've done social media for Online Book Club for a while, and it's not the same as an author, but this is what I always recommend to the authors that we do work with, and if you're an author on social media, you need to put out content that's going to relate to other bookworms and readers. So I post nice pictures of bookshelves, post book relatable quotes that other people will see, and they have to trust you as a personality first and as an author. And then when your book comes out, drop a book trailer. Drop some quotes or reviews of your book. Anything that's going to get people to understand what your book's about and what you're about as an author at a quick glance. So that's my advice. I've made sorry, my nose is very itchy. I've made videos on this before, but that's just a quick little tidbit of advice. But back to John Green. And yeah, I guess it comes what you said was right, that he does know his audience. He does know people are gonna want to read books about a nerdy guy who's going for the beautiful girl. And look at me and you. We both, I read like 3 or 4 John Green, I think 4 John Green books, and you said you read 4.
Dude, I loved The Fault in Our Stars when I first read it, like, I think like 3 or 4 years ago. Then I read the other ones, and I was like, all right, I've seen this before.
It's not stimulating you intellectually.
No, not that the first one was all that crazy either, but it was a nice story.
Yeah, no computer science in John Green books?
Not much, no.
All right, so that's it, right? We talked for, it's been 23 minutes. Like, that's a pretty lengthy discussion.
Wow.
Yeah, I might stand for a little longer and talk about nonsense. But Joey, thanks for coming on, and I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me. I'll talk to you later.
No problem. Well, we got to promote you real quick, so don't jump off the horse that quick, my friend.
Spotify, search Joey Gatto.
Okay, is that all you want, or you want your Twitter?
Yeah, that's all I want.
Spotify, Joey Gatto. Joey's a musician. He has some cool songs out there. A lot of views, hits on Spotify, so you know it's good. All right, Joey, thanks for coming on. I'll talk to you later.
All right, see you.
Bye-bye. There you have it. So I'll stay on for a little more if anyone's in the chat and wants to talk. I know when I do these interviews, it's tough to talk to the chat, but I'll stay on for a little while longer. And if not, thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. If you're on YouTube, please give this video a big thumbs up. if you're on Facebook, thank you for coming. And for those of you who are tuning out now since Joey left, I'll see you next Thursday.